The voice of sharing. Durian ASEAN.
Hi everyone, good morning.
Today, Gowri is leading the show. This is Arlene. Hi, everyone.
Hi, let us know how you're doing, go to our Facebook page, say good morning to us or leave your comment, whatever it is, and also...
And also don't forget, we are listening to Durian ASEAN.
The voice of sharing and discovery. Thank you, Arlene. So how are you today? How are you doing? You look pretty tired, actually.
Oh, really? I slept quite early. I think I forgot to do my makeup, so that's why.
Oh, okay. Makeup can actually make a huge difference in a girl's appearance. Actually, from going super pale to just so vibrant and so beautiful.
So are you saying all girls are not born beautiful?
I'm just saying that makeup makes you more beautiful.
I cannot laugh too much.
That's right.
I'm laughing too much now. Someone's going to get hurt, real hurt.
Someone's going to get hurt real bad. So, speaking of taxi services, do you take the taxis often?
Oh, wow. I haven't taken any taxi services since a couple of months ago. I can't recall myself taking taxi. How is it?
That's because you have a car. Lucky you. But I think for most of us in KL, it's really, really difficult to get a taxi, especially when it's raining. They get so picky and so cocky. It's so difficult to just...
And the last time I took taxi, the services, the condition of the taxi is really not pleasant at all.
And most of them don't even use the meter, You hail the cab and they just stop and they say, 20 ringgit. And you're like, what? No.
Since when is 20 ringgit?
I know. I thought it starts at 3 ringgit. What are you talking about?
And apparently, I missed this one really cool online taxi service. It's called Uber.
That's right. It's actually a smartphone app as well. And it's growing because it's slightly cheaper. I can't remember how much, but it is slightly cheaper than the registered taxis that we have. And it's becoming a very, very popular choice, especially among people in the Klang Valley.
Mm-hmm. And Uber transportation service, I went to the website. It's really, really cool. It has all the services that you want, even the type of car that you want. And in fact, if you want to make money out of transporting people from one places to another places, you can do it. It's like a self-entrepreneurship method of linking the one who is driving the car and the one who wants to go from point A to point B.
Especially if your service is cheap and reliable, most people will turn to you, especially with the current condition of KL. So what's happening here is, of course, the SPAT is not happy because, first of all, this...
Is SPAT not happy, or the taxi drivers are not happy and they complain to SPAT?
They complain to SPAT, so I guess SPAT is speaking on behalf of all the taxi drivers now. And they are claiming that the Uber transport service is to be declared illegal under the Land Public Transportation Act 2010 because it's not registered with SPAT.
So for those of you who who are asking what is SPAT, it's not a literal word for like SPAT.
It's not the past tense of spit. So
it's actually the Gabungan Persatuan dan Syarikat Taksi Semenanjung Malaysia.
And they are, like I said, they are actually saying that this service is illegal and it can even be termed as kereta sapu because that's how the kereta sapu works. They're not registered. They just drive around, looking for chances, looking for their customers.
Literally, it is kereta sapu. It's just that you use online technology such as your smartphone and the internet to link the service provider to those who wants to go to point A to point B.
So I think the conclusion here is very simple. If you don't want to have Uber, if you don't want Uber to do as well as they're doing, just maybe SPAT should go back to their taxi drivers and tell them to change their attitude, Don't be so mean to the passengers. Don't just say 20 ringgit for like the closest place. And I think it starts with them, because if our taxi service is already reliable, there is no reason for me or for anyone else to go and use Uber or to use any other app there is, because I'm already comfortable with it. But the thing is, most people are not even happy. They don't feel safe. They don't feel like it's reliable. They feel like they're being cheated sometimes. So it's very easy for people. Not sometimes. Well, I must say that there are many times when the taxi drivers do actually use their meters, but there are also the taxi drivers who don't use the meters, and I guess they are a lot more. They're larger in number.
Have you tried Uber before? I haven't heard any of my closest friend tried Uber, but when I look through the social media, it's quite interesting when I look through all the comments. One of the comments, which is one of the comment, this person that he said that he took Uber before, and he said it's super fast. I mean, you just say that you want to go here and there, and then suddenly there will be like the car will come to you. So it's like a faster way of getting a taxi.
I think Spat is gonna hate you right now for saying that.
Yeah, and he mentioned that if the taxi service, the current taxi service, want to improve themselves and to compete with Uber, they have to look at a bigger picture, which is to service their customer, and they are not doing that positively. That's the problem.
And
it
also,
seems like.
To address the problem from the grassroots level, as you like to say, to really go up to all the drivers and tell them that, if you guys treat your customers right, then you will get your people back, because there's no reason for anyone to switch service to go to and try a different taxi if the current one is already good enough.
Not providing good services is one of the reason why the taxi drivers in Semenanjung, Malaysia, or Peninsular Malaysia are not doing that well, are not competing well in terms of giving the better service towards their customer compared to the Uber one, the Uber services. But at the same time, I do understand with taxi drivers, they have to go through formalization by registering their taxi with the public service vehicle, like you mentioned earlier. And with Uber, is simply, whoever wants to be part of Uber, they just register with Uber, and instantly they are an entrepreneur without going through all the formalization. What if you go through, you went to a taxi that is that has a person who has a person with dodgy characters?
I think ultimately everyone just wants something that's cheap, something that's safe, and something that is reliable. And whichever, whether it's Uber or whether it's the Spat, whoever that can provide that service to the people will be the ultimate winner of this scenario.
One thing I like about the taxi drivers, the taxi in Malaysia, is you can see clearly the identification of the taxi drivers in front of his, next to his steering wheel.
On the dashboard.
Yeah, the dashboard there. So at least this is a registered person. You can feel safe, even though it's not 100%, but at least that he's registered and he's a legit taxi driver. But with Uber, it's hard to pinpoint who's the driver, because they are not even part of Uber's employees. They are just an entrepreneur who happen to be registered under Uber.
And a lot of females, they are encouraged to take pictures of that details when they get into the taxi and send it to their friends or something. So in case you get, robbed or raped or what, it's very easy, all your friends know which taxi you were, what was the number, what was the guy's name, and it's so easy to get the culprit. So like you said, Uber may not be as reliable, as safe as that, but then again, it also goes back to customer service.
The best solution is to mix Uber with the current taxi registration that we have, is to have self-entrepreneurs to do their thing, but at the same time, to get them registered under the government's whatever law that we have right now.
That is a brilliant idea, and maybe there is something that Spat and Uber can probably try and work out.
Because the problem is, the current situation is not allowing people to enjoy riding taxis with and some more they feel unsafe even with the current taxi drivers there is in Peninsula Malaysia.
I don't know if you know this, but especially if you go to clubs at night and you want to leave the place around 3 or 4 in the morning.
Definitely the clubbing person.
If you want to leave the place around 3 or 4 in the morning, whatever taxi you hail, the fixed rate is like 25 ringgit.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, they will not even negotiate, and they will tell you that this is the clubbing price. Where I was like, there's no such thing as the clubbing price.
And the problem is, when you complain it to SPAD, they are not taking action with it.
So I guess this is a good wake-up call for them.
So even with SPAD, they need to up their game and make their taxi drivers accountable to whatever misconduct that they are doing.
So another issue about human rights that we have here is by your favorite president, I think, Jokowi.
Oh, it's the combination of Jokowi and his vice, Kala.
And they are pushing for legal instruments to allow the establishment of an ad hoc human rights court to hear cases of past human rights violation.
That's interesting. Human rights violation has been happening especially during the Suharto era, and I believe no one was accountable for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really hard back then because, you know, Suharto kind of had absolute power over the whole country, whereas Jokowi is definitely heading for a change. And another person, actually, when I read this, the person who came to my mind was Prabowo. He actually back then he did violate a lot of human rights, and he was even accused and was about to be charged for some human rights cases. And the moment I read that Jokowi was coming out with this, I felt like, you know, it's kind of rekindling the rivalry between them as well.
That is such a relief. Prabowo's wife is actually Suharto's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So he's very much closely related to the Suharto's family. He knows all the human rights abuses that happened, and he was part of it when he was during Suharto's era. He was actually one of the generals.
Mm-hmm.
And Jokowi repeatedly pledged to resolve the 1998 cases involving human rights violation. Of course, like you mentioned, Prabowo is part of this, was part of this. And during his presidential campaign, a move that apparently earned him support from human rights activists, and that's true. Majority, if not all, of my friends from the civil society in Indonesia, none of them support Prabowo, interestingly.
Was it just because of the human rights thing?
I believe so.
And I think another thing that is also worth bringing up is also the fact that Jokowi seems to be really interested in all this, you know, human rights issue, all this mental revolution. He's not just going for modernization or building infrastructure. He really wants to do something about all these basic rights first and get that right and then move on from there.
Is to improve the third world mentality. Remember, in Malaysia, we always have this connotation, first world structure, but third world mentality.
Was it Mahathir who said that?
I think so.
Right.
And I was impressed during Jokowi's presidential election is the idea of Salam Dua Jari.
Mm-hmm.
I think he really clicked well with the younger generation in Indonesia.
Would it be that after Jokowi and Kala have set up their human rights court, that they will actually bring Prabowo in? I don't know why I'm so interested in how Prabowo is going to react to this, because he has some human rights cases. Would he be one of the ones who will be charged, you think?
Yes, he will be one of the generals that will be charged. Aside from that, a report published by the National Commission on Human Rights, Komnas, in 2003 also accused then Army Commander General Wiranto, chairman of the Hanura Party, as one of the 5 political parties that officially endorsed the Jokowi Kala ticket in July 9 election to be responsible with human rights violations. So even people or high-ranking people who supported Jokowi also are questioned to be violating human rights.
Human rights is one of the most important things in a country. Whenever I like how you put it sometimes when you say everything goes back to human rights, whether it's race related, religion or whatever. Like what's happening in ISIS, what's happening in Gaza, people tend to make it about race, make it about religion, but essentially it's about violating the human rights, and it's very hard for most people, I guess, especially like you said, for third world mentality people to look at things that way. So it's and Jokowi is trying to get everyone to look at it from a human rights perspective, which is definitely.
And due to that, Article 43 of the 2000 Law on Human Rights stipulates that an ad hoc human rights court can be set up by a recommendation from the House of Representatives and a decree by the President, which is why Jokowi is pushing for it, and his Vice President Kala as well.
So speaking of human rights, we have thousands of other people whose rights are being violated pretty badly. They are being starved, beaten, and these are people who are on an escape boat to Malaysia, according to the new reports by UN.
Wow. I have no words to say. So on the 12 months of June, around 53,000 people left ports in the Myanmar-Bangladesh border area, 61% or more than the previous years. Many with the hope of reaching family in Malaysia, according to the report of irregular maritime movements. And they paid between $50 to $300 to board boats carrying up to 700 passengers, some manned by armed guards, many of whom dole out verbal abuse or beatings to prevent their human cargo from moving around.
So it seems that this thing has been going on for quite some time, and nothing has been done to address this yet, and there are more and more people being affected by these boat escapes to Malaysia in hopes of meeting their family or getting a new job. And we do have the UN agency here in Malaysia, of course, and they are trying their best to cater to the refugees in Malaysia, giving them a place to stay, trying to have activities for them. But even then, there are still this other group of people who are trying to come to Malaysia, and they are not as lucky as the other as the other batch of people who came over. And it's just really sad when we see the way they are being treated.
They are being treated like animals. In fact, more than 200 people are thought up to be died making the trip so far.
And yeah, that's due to factors such as illness, heat, lack of food, lack of water, and the worst of all, which is severe beating.
Sometimes I'm surprised. I'm surprised because people can treat other people so inhumanely, but at the same time, we cry for human rights, we cry for democracy and justice, but we don't look at our backyard, how much we have created sufferings for people from other countries.
Going back to our intern before, Osmod, when he was here, he did this research about the Nepali workers in Malaysia and that condition. Even then, he had some pretty shocking results in his research, where the workers here were being forced to work 12 to 14 hours every day, and they only get 2 off days a month. So like you said, we keep crying about human rights, that we're Malaysians, we're way forward in our thinking and all, but all these little things are still happening, and it's really, really saddening that it's coming from us Malaysians, who are supposed to be well known for our very loving and friendly characters.
I'm quite curious about his research because I really want to see it. Yeah. We need to email him for his the outcome of his research.
And it seems that they are also being diagnosed with other diseases such as beriberi, which is a condition caused by severe malnutrition, vitamin B deficiency, and also other things like deprivation, abuse, suffering every step of the way. And most of these are all the Rohingya community, as we all know. They are being tortured in their own country. They're being tortured in our country. feel really sad for them. And
In fact, as many as 38,000 people have registered as Rohingya in Malaysia, and noting that since 2013, many have arrived with serious medical conditions. This was reported by the CNN.
and from the government of Myanmar to maintain their relationship, I think the commissioners from the U.S. Commission of Religious Freedom did a 5-day visit to Myanmar last week. This is reported by edition.cnn.com, that they went over to observe the situation over there, and they said they were deeply troubled by reports of abuses against the Rohingya. And they also said that no impartial observers questioned the reports of these systematic and large-scale abuses of human rights, and involving all the death and injuries. And the past few years, though, it seems that President Thein Sein has actually won some praise, that he's actually making some changes, but I guess his changes are still not quite there yet. Maybe very, very small, minute changes that's not quite enough to really resolve whatever that's happening with the Rohingya. And
The situation in Myanmar is really complex. It seems like there were just too many human rights abuses happen in the past. If they want to clean up their mess, it will take them quite a long time to do so. You cannot do it under just one president, and the president is still very much a military president. It has to be openly elected by the people of Myanmar.
perhaps he can turn to Jokowi for some advice on how to
Jokowi is a good example.
advocate human rights and protect the basic rights of the people.
Especially if you are governing such a large country, you know.
And about speaking of human rights, we are moving on to drug trafficking, which is another issue that is very rife in around ASEAN, actually all over Southeast Asia. I think Malaysia is pretty notorious for drug trafficking as well, although we do have a very harsh penalty for drug traffickers, but that doesn't seem to be deterring certain people from still getting involved in drug trafficking.
And Office of the Narcotics Control Board, ONCB, Secretary General, I hope I mentioned this, Permpong Chawvalit, said that ONCB is inviting chief of anti-drug agency in all the 9 ASEAN countries. I wonder why 9, not 10, to attend a meeting where it hopes to exchange policy ideas and develop regional strategy. It's great that all these ASEAN countries are joining forces to battle against drug trafficking. One of the statement made by Mr. Permpong, we cannot get rid of drugs on our own. We have to cooperate with our neighboring countries, which is true, especially at the area, they call it the Golden Triangle. It's the area between, is the Mekong River area, where you have Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and all the region between amongst the Golden Triangle, where drug trafficking happens at a very frequent basis.
What's interesting here is this article reported by the BangkokPost.com also said that drug traffickers are actually finding it more difficult these days to smuggle drugs into Thailand because of the presence of the military junta over there, because the soldiers are closely guarding the borders of Thailand because of how strict they are, and also to prevent anyone from leaving or coming in as they like. And this is actually kind of helping out with the drug trafficking problem, which is kind of an irony there. we don't really saw it that way.
It's kind of interesting when you see that the approach of the military government of Thailand is very puritanistic, meaning that whatever that it deems as sinful or not in line with the puritanical ideals of the Thai government or the Thai military government, it will do a good job at hindering it.
Right. And it also seems that the strategy right now, they're trying to apply a U.S. anti-drug model called the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas. And he said this program will integrate the work of provincial governors, the ONCB officials, as you mentioned earlier, police, soldiers, local officials, and other law enforcement agencies operating in a critical drug trafficking hub.
Do you know that Bangkok is also home to 30% of the country's narcotics problem?
I didn't know, but I'm not really surprised. I wonder how Malaysia is also doing in that scale.
Well, what I know, Malaysia is one of the major country when it comes to trafficking, especially human trafficking, and it probably could include drug trafficking as well.
And we do have a very strict penalty for that. I think it's just a death sentence. It's a mandatory sentence, but even then it's still rife, and I think that also goes back to all this corruption that's happening within the system and all. So it's definitely a way forward here for ASEAN to join in the force of to battle against drug trafficking, because it is a very, very serious issue that needs to be addressed right away.
But using too much capital punishment is not really the long-term solution. You have to address the socio-economic condition of the areas where drug trafficking is rife.
That's right. Going back to the grassroots is always the most effective solution, because you go back to finding out why are these people getting into drugs in the first place. It could even be due to the unemployment rate in our country right now.
I mean, when you have nothing to eat and you struggle to find a job, of course, smuggling drugs or trafficking drugs is the best way to do. You get money out of it.
And I think that's all the time that we have for our news commentary this morning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we're also starting to send out our newsletters.
Starting from this week, we'll send out newsletters. If you are interested to keep up with our news commentaries, our interviews with interesting people all over Southeast Asia, send us an email at duranasian@gmail.com.
So we'll come back later for our Blast from the Grassroots session. So for now, I'm going to say bye.
Bye.